Hey guys, there's an issue at the moment that's kind of becoming rampant. I wanted to make a video discussing this topic. It's something that's becoming really problematic lately. I think a lot of people will be starting to encountering it in much higher amounts. Now the topic is hacking. I want to discuss the entire issue, what I believe about it, and also what I think can be done, because I really do love PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. I think it is a phenomenal game and it's got a lot of potential. I just don't think the developers are doing the right job at all of putting any of the effort or money investments into the areas that need to be, and I think this needs to be addressed pretty quickly, or I do think the game will die out. And I know a lot of people will be like, how can the game die out if it's so popular? But I can give examples of other games that actually reached an amazing level of popularity and now they're completely dead, like War Z for example, where the developers sold it to the actual cheap developers for the game. Yes, that's right, the cheap developers who ruined the War Z game then bought the game that they had killed. Yes, now you have the new Z, whose developers are the previous cheat developers of War Z. It is a great thing, isn't it? Now, War Z peaked at hundreds of thousands of players. There was 100 pop servers that were constantly full, and hundreds of them, and it was getting to points where you couldn't actually get in the servers with your friends. So like I said, do not think that any game is untouchable or this can't happen. It can happen to anything, and that's the last thing I actually want. I absolutely, as I said, love PUBG, and I want to see this thrive. So let's discuss the problem in depth and go through it step by step. I'm just gonna look at this guy in spectator mode so you guys can see exactly what he sees. Now, as you can see, he has the ability to ESP, which is extrasensory perception. He can basically x-ray and see people through the walls. But now there's a new hack which allows you to turn off bullet collision, which means that you can shoot through all of the environment, trees, rocks, houses, as if there is nothing in front of you, making absolute certainty that you're going to win the match. You can shoot people when they don't have line of sight of you, and because you can constantly see them, you're just unchallengeable and unfightable. So from what you're seeing here, guys, and you can probably agree with me on this, if you encountered this actual individual and you even had a full squad, there's absolutely no way to contest him or fight him in any manner, and I'm sure for hell he's gonna kill everybody before the final circle even comes close, which means that you're gonna never have a chance to get into close quarters combat to say possibly get a shot on him, because he's never gonna let that happen. The chances of winning when you're in a game like this are just nil, as I said. It's not going to happen, and the more rampant that this becomes and the more elaborate that these hacks are developed, the worse the game performance will be, and it's gonna get to the point where we don't even have a chance to beat the hackers by just sheer luck or by making them do really dumb stuff that backfires on them. Now, I'm not going to tell anybody how to do this, as there are specific steps that are harder than just what you would initially think, but there are hidden settings in the INI to change off collision as well as object rendering, which means that this is probably what these cheats are working on. And actually, I'm just really shocked that all of this is stored client side instead of server side, meaning that you can openly edit it using a simple cheat engine program if you had the capability. I think many people can agree that you yourself should not be able to change your bullet collision client side and turn it on and off at will, and that would probably be the first step that they can do to addressing a lot of these modern hacks. At this point, the hacks aren't anything customly developed, they're just changing simple values that are already stored in the game data folders. So this would cull a lot of the modern cheats, and also, of course, aimbots are always going to exist, for example, but at least we have a fighting chance because they can't aimbot us through a whole mountain and require line of sight like before. Now the second thing is, at the moment, Bluehole is only incorporated one form of cheat protection, which is Battle Eye. I'm not even sure that they do IP bans, which is a little bit abysmal. However, I want to give an example that is relative: Fortnite. Now, I don't want to compare these two games, they're very different in their own way. I want to compare how they address cheating. Now, I had the unfortunate experience of playing Fortnite on release. And actually, on the first day, I would say it was actually pretty good. The second day, there was already cheats developed for it, and Epic had actually put in no cheat protection as a contingency beforehand. It wasn't just me encountering enemy hackers at this point. I'm not even kidding when I say like 1 out of 3 of my games where I played squads, at least one of my teammates was hacking, and sometimes multiple of my random teammates were hacking. And sometimes they died to other hackers because that's how bad the issue was. There was hackers almost every single game on your team and on every enemy team. So this is a free-to-play game, keep that in mind, which means that if you're gonna put cheat protection in, because there's no paywall, it's much easier if you have bypasses to get back into the game. meaning that if any of their forms of cheat protection are invalid, you can't just say, for example, oh well, this wouldn't work if they incorporated it in PUBG because you could just bypass it, because on Fortnite it would be easier to bypass. Now, 1 week later after release, the Fortnite devs released lots of layers. So the first one was that they introduced an anti-cheat. I'm not exactly sure what program they use, but obviously it's the standard BattleEye type program that scans for injections, programs, and other things. Then they also introduced a stat tracker, like Fairfight, so that people who were getting abysmally high KDs and accuracy are then tracked and flagged, and then can be manually reviewed. They also then introduced hardware ID and IP bans to combat the hackers, as well as VPN detection and VPN banning, meaning that you can't play the game with a lot of the VPNs. Now yes, there are ways to bypass all of these, but because a lot of the way that this would be handled and bypassed would require actual one-on-one interaction, for example, you can't just code a universal hack that allows all VPNs to be used on the Fortnite game. You would have to configure your hack for specific VPNs, specific configurations, countries and routing, etc. So it does actually act as a very effective deterrent. Now 1 week on, remember, about 1 in 1 games was having multiple hackers in it. I have now 1 in 50 games has a hacker in it, and that's a great change, and this is something that PUBG should do, incorporate more layers of deterrent so that they can effectively counter the hacking. Now for the intentions and validity of this video, I want to say that I'm not just some random scrub screaming cheater. I want to give some context and background for anyone that's still around and who is interested. I joined PUBG about a month and a half after early access, so PUBG had already been through a closed beta, which some of my squad were in, and then it had gone on to early access later on Steam in a much changed iteration. My squad were actually in the top 100, all 3 of them that I was playing with. One was in the top 10, one was in the top 30, and the main teammate that got me into the squad, which was my close personal friend, was top 76th in the world. Having a full squad like that was absolutely amazing, and it gave you an experience unlike any other in a game. It's basically Grandmaster's ELO play, and I was really looking forward to grinding my way up. I managed to personally, in 2 different game modes, one in solo and one in squad, get myself up to the top 1000th in the world. And considering that my stats had averaged out at the same level as my squads, even when playing alone, I was quite confident that I could reach the top 100 in the coming seasons. But this is where things start to take a little bit of a turn. The further on the game started to be developed, and the more months that went on, the more cheaters we encountered. It started off very, very slow, and I do want to say that when the game was at about 200 to 300,000 players, just like Fortnite, you would encounter a hacker like once every 50 to 100 games, if even. I'd say in my first 100 to 200 hours of the game, I didn't even encounter a single hacker. However, there is MMR in the game, and that's matchmaking ranking and an ELO system, and there is matchmaking based on that, and the developers did confirm it even in the initial early access release, and said that it will be continually developed throughout the entire cycle. So we can only assume it's gotten more elaborate now, and more top tier and high ranking players are being matched against each other. Considering that hackers will be at the top ELO bracket, this means that anyone aspiring for the dream that we have of getting to the top 100 basically can't do that anymore. Now I'm in the top 0.1% in kill and win rating on the game, which is pretty goddamn good if you think about it, but I still can't get into that top 100, and not being able to do so and seeing people there that are at like 140.0 KD and there's no stat tracking banning them, and their headshot ratio is 80% at like 2,000 kills, it's just a little bit downhearting. You don't really feel the hope anymore, and this is the problem, because this is a very competitive game, and you can basically say the life of it is based on how far one can push themselves and go. The majority of games now at a high ELO, you encounter, I'd say, 1 to 2 hackers every other game, and I'm sure anyone who actually watches this video who's in the top 1% will see that recurring pattern, especially when you get to the top 0.1% to top 100. It's almost every other player. Now I'm not shitting on PUBG, it's an absolutely exceptional and phenomenal game. This is why I'm actually making the video, because I absolutely love the game. I appreciate what it is, the idea of it, the competitiveness. how fast-paced the action strategy gets after such a long looting period initially, the initial planning that goes into where you're going to land based on the plane's orientation and path, the ability to use vehicles to traverse massive amounts of terrain at the expense of giving away your visibility, location, and not being able to return fire accurately. There are so many things in the game and everything seems to have a trade-off, and it's beautifully crafted because of that. Many of my friends have now quit PUBG though, even the ones in the top 100, and many are in the process of questioning whether they want to quit as well, and I just want this issue to be addressed, because if it isn't addressed, as I said, like previous games with War Z, everything's going to reverse and the competitive community is going to die out, and that is the last thing that I wish to see. I do believe there are many ways to address this issue, like the hardware ID, IP, VPN bans, etc, and I just want to know what you guys think below, and if your experiences match up with what I've said. Please leave a comment if you did enjoy the video. If you didn't enjoy the video, please leave a criticism. If you did or did not enjoy the video, leave a like and a dislike please as well. I do hope you've enjoyed watching this though, and I've given you a new perception or something to think about. I just hope you're having a beautiful day. As always, take it easy and peace.